Hey everyone, Evan Jones with you here on the RPAC Rundown podcast. We've got another great episode lined up. We're going to check out the RPAC Rundown all-conference volleyball and football teams on the podcast this week. We will also recap some featured matchups that we had from last week as the basketball season is underway. And finally, Athletes of the Week brought to you by First Central Bank is back. As always, check us out on social media and rpacrundown.com. Of course, the RPAC Rundown podcast is brought to you by a bunch of great sponsors like Arapahoe Rehab and Fitness, Cambridge Supermarket, Webb's Oilfield Services, Cambridge Rehab and Fitness, Onyx Native, and C+. We'll take a break. You're listening to the RPAC Rundown podcast. All right, folks, let's check out the RPAC Rundown all-conference volleyball teams. You can see all of the teams on social media. We'll go through first, second, and third teams here on the podcast. Again, though, you can see all of the teams, including honorable mention selections, on social media. Bear with me. If you're watching, I'll be going between a couple of browsers here to make sure I see all of the teams. So how were the teams decided? We pooled the RPAC East and West honors together. Coaches were allowed to make one additional nominations if they so chose to do so for our conference teams. Coaches voted for the teams, and then the teams were made up of 5 hitters, a setter, and a libero. And again, thanks to the coaches for working with us on this. It was kind of a fun thing. We've had some requests in the past to do some conference teams. We just weren't sure how we want to go about it. And, obviously we're going to continue to work through some of these things and see how we can maybe improve it if it needs to be improved. But yeah, we will take a look at the first, second, and third teams. Of course, going to do my best with all the names. I think I know them, but if I do mess it up, I am sorry. So for the third team first, we'll go with the 5 hitters to begin with. Emily Shack of Dundee County Stratton, Kaylee Softly of Maywood Hayes Center, Tori Bowes of Southern Valley, Madison Carlson of Hitchcock County, then Annika Nelms of Southwest, the setter, Mallory Springer of Cambridge, libero, Kenzie Bardsley of Juanita Palisade. Now for the second team, the hitters to begin with. Brooklyn Evans of Bertrand, Addie Hunt of Southern Valley, Remy Stout of Medicine Valley, Carissa Stingle of Maywood Hayes Center, Brooklyn Holtz of Cambridge, the setter, Aspen Billiter of Southwest, and the libero, Allison Van Pelt of Southwest. And finally, the first team, the hitters to begin with. Atlee Nelms of Southwest, Kirsten Moore of Alma, Kira Nelms of Southwest, Aaron Johnson of Cambridge, Clara Spargo of Dundee County Stratton, Miley Whitney of Alma, and Fallon Elfelt of Sutherland was the libero, Miley Whitney, the setter. Failed to mention that. So the setter was Miley Whitney of Alma, libero was Fallon Elfelt of Sutherland, and those first 5 were the hitters for the first team. Big thanks to the coaches for their help on that. Thought it was kind of a cool and unique honor to do also. And like I mentioned, you can see all 3 of those teams on social media and the honorable mention selections on social media too. We'll take a short break and then we'll go through the RPAC Rundown football all-conference selections. You're listening to the RPAC Rundown podcast. Welcome back to the RPAC Rundown podcast. New to this season also, we did RPAC Rundown all-conference football team. So how the teams were selected were the coaches made nominations for their team. We did a limited number of nominations, and then the coaches voted for those teams. And to go along with that, 6-man and 8-man players were mixed together. So we will go through the first and second teams, and then you can see the full list of honorable mention selections on social media. We're working on blog posts for both the volleyball and football all-conference selections. And of course, you can see it all on social media, like I said. So let's begin with the second team. Second team offense, quarterback, Houston Billiter of Southwest. Running backs, 2 of them, Ashton Johns of Wallace and Carter Prop of Hitchcock County. At the tight end / wide receiver positions, Cade Fisher of Arapahoe and Derek Kelly of Southwest. 3 offensive linemen, Ryan Oberg of Highline, Colton Perks of Cambridge, Dalton Hagan of Hitchcock County, and the athlete position went to Xavier Mitchell of Alma. Second team defense, 3 defensive linemen, Derek Kelly of Southwest, Lakin Wissink of Dundee County Stratton, Colton Perks of Cambridge, linebacker positions, 3 of them also, Asher Hecox of Highline, Ashton Johns of Wallace, and Jaden Roof of Cambridge. For the defensive backs, 3 of these also: Isaiah Neal of Alma, Jace Hawkswell of Hitchcock County, and Jackson Sainer of Sutherland. For the special teams, Houston Billiter, the kicker of Southwest, punter Wyatt Walker of Paxton, kick returner Isaiah Neal of Alma, punt returner Brady Allmeyer of Cambridge. Now for the first team honors. On the offensive side at quarterback, Dante Horner of Dundee County Stratton, Will Casey of Arapahoe at running back, along with Creighton Weiss of Juanita Palisade. Tight end and wide receiver positions, Trenton Williams of Southwest and August Shaw of Dundee County Stratton. Offensive line positions, 3 of them: Trey Downey of Arapahoe, Eli Schaefer of Arapahoe, Brock Bailey of Dundee County Stratton. And the athlete position, Ethan Latta of Dundee County Stratton. So as you can see, for the first team offense and the first team defense, you'll see a lot of Dundee County Stratton and Arapahoe representatives. On the first team defense, defensive linemen, 3 of them: Jason Smith of Arapahoe, Thunder Nelson of Bertrand, Lane Bybee of Dundee County Stratton, Hayden Seach of Arapahoe at linebacker, Carson Schuler also at linebacker from Hitchcock County, and then Breck Horner from Dundee County Stratton was the 3rd linebacker. Defensive backs went to Trenton Roscop of Arapahoe, Grayson Kohler of Arapahoe, and Creighton Ruggles of Cambridge. For the specialists, it was Alex Diaz, the kicker, Will Casey, the punter, those 2 both from Arapahoe, Tyson Sullivan, the kick returner from Wallace, and Grayson Kohler, the punt returner from Arapahoe. Fun and unique thing we tried for football. As you know, district selections are made. Other media outlets do their things, but I'm not aware of anyone else doing conference football selections. A little bit unorthodox, of course, where we mix the 6-man and 8-man teams. I know there's area teams that some publications do, but we thought this was a fun thing to try out with a big conference like this. We just thought it'd be a unique way to honor the student athletes. Huge thanks to the coaches for helping us out with this for both the volleyball and the football. We appreciate your patience as we went through the process. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we will go through the RPAC Rundown Featured Matchups we had from last week. Of course, those are going to be from December 5th, 6th, and 7th. Very busy to begin the winter sports season, just how we like it. We'll take a break. Be right back. Well, basketball season is underway. Let's go through our 3 nights of hoops action that we covered last week. Let's begin last Thursday between Bertrand and Alma for the girls and boys doubleheader there in Bertrand. As mentioned, these games are from last week on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so that would have been December 5th, 6th, and 7th, in which we covered games. Let's begin with the girls matchup. The Cardinals won big, 51-14. Both teams initially struggled to get the ball to go in the hoop in that girls matchup, as Alma led by a score of 4-0 going into the second quarter. Alma eventually got some shots to fall, so they were able to force a lot of pressure against Bertrand and get some easy buckets. Bertrand, when they got in their sets, had some decent looks. They just couldn't connect on some of those shots. For Bertrand, Olivia Phillips had a nice game, scoring 9 points. For Alma, they had 4 players in double figures. Cameron Scott had 13 points, and she had 3 3-pointers. Camry Neal had 11. Chase Malzahn had 11, and Kirsten Moore had 10. In the boys' game, it was back and forth for a little while, but eventually Alma pulled away, and they won 54-31. For Bertrand, they were led by Chase Vossler, as he had 8 points. Caden Hatfield had 6, and Hunter Nelson and Marshall Steinbrink, and also Marcus Hernandez, each had 5. For Alma, they had 3 players in double figures. Xavier Mitchell scored 15 points. He also had 4 blocks. Tucker Biscup had 14 points, and Titus Epp had 13. This RPAC Rundown Featured Matchup was brought to you by Vitalix Inc., Livestock Feed Tubs. Contact Jimmy Sindelar at 308-920-2345. Holdridge Family Dental, First State Bank, C+, Dr. Jesse Neal Dental Care. And we'll take a short break, and we will continue on the RPAC Rundown podcast. On Friday, we went to Binkelman as Cambridge and Dundee County Stratton squared off. In the girls' game, DCS jumped out to a big lead and never looked back as they won 61-31. In the opening quarter, the Tigers forced turnovers and got some easy buckets. In the second half, Cambridge came out with some fire, scoring 13 points in the third. They were able to get some shots to fall and played some solid defense, but the Tigers, they were just too much. DCS was led by Abby Spargo, who scored 18 points, and Ava Lutz added 12. Elizabeth Kubik led Cambridge with 10 points, and Mallory Springer had 8. In the boys' game, it was close early on, but the Tigers used a strong late second period and a monster second half to win 65-30. DCS, of course, is regarded as a top 10 team in Class D1. Cambridge played a really strong first quarter, down 18-13, but after that, it was all DCS. Cambridge was led by Creighton Ruggles with 13 points. Hodge Rayburn had 10, and Gavin Gunderson, he added 5. For DCS, Ethan Latta had 23 points to lead the Tigers. Breck Horner had 17, and Lane Bybee added 12. This RPAC Rundown Featured Matchup was brought to you by Webb's Oilfield Service, Amateurs Bar and Grill, Farmers National Company, Lori Harding Real Estate Sales, Red Roof Farms, Prairie Girl Candle Company, Benkelman Pharmacy, JBK Operating LLC, Dundee County Hospital and Quality Healthcare, and Cambridge Rehab and Fitness. We'll take another break and then look at Saturday's games between Southwest and Maywood Hayes Center. You're listening to the RPAC Rundown Podcast. On Saturday, we were in Bartley for a matchup between Maywood Hayes Center and Southwest. Of course, girls and boys doubleheader. Let's begin with the girls' game. Maywood Hayes Center ended up winning 57-48. The tempo of the game was excellent as both teams were able to get out in transition and get buckets. Southwest was led by Aspen Billiter and her 17 points. Allison Van Pelt, Kira Nelms, and Atlee Nelms each had 7. For Maywood Hayes Center, Carissa Stengel had 21 points to lead the way. Kesley Cox scored 9. Blakely Farr had 12. And Kaylee Softly scored 8. Now in the boys' game, it was all Maywood Hayes Center as they won by a final tally of 62-29. The Wolves caught fire in the first and never looked back. Maywood Hayes Center hit 7 3-pointers in the first quarter. Cade Brose made 4 of them. Charlie Callis had 2, and Jackson Anders had 1. The Wolves had a total of 13 3-pointers in the game. Cade Brose led MHC with 18 points, all of them coming from the 3-point line. Charlie Callis had 12, all of those coming from the 3-point line, and Keenan Richards had 12, and Jackson Anders had 11. Southwest was led by Jacob Barber with 9 points. Houston Billiter had 8. This RPAC Rundown Featured Matchup was brought to you by Stengel Taxidermy, Go Light, and Lord's Hardware and Furniture. We'll take another break, then it'll be time to announce the RPAC Rundown Athletes of the Week, brought to you by First Central Bank. Welcome back to the RPAC Rundown Podcast. It's time to announce the Athletes of the Week, brought to you by First Central Bank. Let's plan for tomorrow together. First Central Bank, member FDIC. Our female Athletes of the Week. Yes, we said athletes. We don't do this very often, but we felt it was necessary this week. It goes to the Southwest Girls Wrestling Team. The Rough Riders won their home invite last week, and they had 6 of their wrestlers place in the top 3. Our male Athlete of the Week goes to a wrestler, Colton Fody of Paxton. At the Highline invite on Friday, Fody, he placed 3rd at 157 pounds, and at the Perkins County invite on Saturday, he placed 1st. Once again, our Athletes of the Week are brought to you by First Central Bank, member FDIC. That'll do it for this week's episode of the RPAC Rundown Podcast. Of course, the podcast is brought to you by a bunch of great sponsors like JBK Operating LLC, Scouts Recreation, First Central Bank, Cross Diamond Cattle Company, and Prairie Girl Candle Company. Thanks a bunch for tuning in. We'll see you later.